Morning and welcome to Event Horizons. I'm your anchor, Dr. Robin Falkov, and it is a pleasure to be here with you today and every other morning. Now, many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore, just like that memorable scene in Network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. We are changing the paradigm to give you what you did not know you so desperately need. Oh my gosh, this is quite into a long and crazy week here in the USA. For those of you listening in other parts of the world, I think we have exemplified craziness and kindergarten politics and overreaction and a lot of sad occurrences. We are looking at so many events, but first of all, for those of you who are not familiar with me, if this is the first time you're tuning in, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We're here every morning from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time, Monday to Friday, and we have a vast array of team members that are reporting on different topics and events around the world. And today we will be joined by Melanie Vritschan and later WH. But if you need to contact me, please do so. I have to tell you, while I fixed some of my links, producer Jerry had gone through my site and he said, you know, Robin, some of your links aren't working to reach you. And I thought, okay, I'll do that over. And I even improved some of the visuals for my Contact Us page, so it's not that hard to read. But my website, as I'm talking about it, is healthfreedomrights.com. And that is my focus. Protecting our health freedom rights, all of our rights, especially our right to have access to the necessary information so that we can make informed choices. And that is what happens to be our focus here at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. Revolution Radio presents such a diversity of hosts and information that it is an online file for you to go to when you need to do some research, when you want to find out, what's the best way to maintain my car? What should I do so that I'll save money in the long run? And of course, WH has a show just about that you can download for a podcast if you can support us by paying $4.95 a month. And if you cannot, the shows are available on YouTube. That's the commitment, that we make the necessary information available to all of you. And we feel and look at each and every one of our audience as part of our extended family. And we hope you feel the same, and we hope you get more involved and participate in the evening roundtables. And if you're unable to make donations, there's so many other things that you can do. We need more producers during the day. You will get great training to learn how to do all of this. And it's just a great team to be part of with a bright future and so much going on. So I would like to get Melanie online. Let me see if we have her already. And we do. Good afternoon to you, Melanie. Oh, Melanie is loading up. Melanie is our team member who's in Brussels in Belgium. And good morning, Melanie. I mean, good afternoon. I said it right the first time and you were loading.
Good afternoon, Robin.
Thank you. So, what is going on in your world? How are you?
Yes, I'm, let's say, hopeful.
Good.
Because there have been indeed a few positive developments. Just to remind our listeners, I'm with two organizations, the European Coalition Against Covert Harassment and the International Center Against Abuse of Covert Technologies. And we're raising awareness for the problem of non-consensual implantation with remote influencing technologies, that is used or abused on citizens in the European Union and the US principally, but around the globe actually. And we're providing them with evidence that this crime has been done to them. And in this framework, the European Parliament is just having an investigation in, let's say, the unlawful electronic surveillance of EU citizens in the light of the NSA surveillance revelations. So the members of the European Parliament are more open to this, that, if they surveil us and keep our emails and our phones and surveil us anyway electronically, then there's only a small step to actually implant a person with an electronic device, an electronic implant. So within this whole investigations that are currently conducted, and they're hearing various NSA whistleblowers, and on this there is a more favorable climate actually to hear us on the issues that we're concerned with. And in this way, and I had requested already some time ago a hearing in front of the responsible parliamentary committee, which is the Committee for Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. Recently I contacted a member of this committee who is German and explained to her a little bit the whole problem and what we would like to do, and ultimately we would like to have appropriate EU legislation created to protect our citizens from these kinds of abuses. And she was very open to this, and I have now an appointment with her in 2 weeks' time. And what I hope is that, as she is a member of this committee that is precisely dealing with these issues, I hope that she will be able to put in a good word for us and February influence the chairman to hear us, to grant us this hearing.
And how does that look? Does it look promising that will come about?
Well, I think it's already promising that she has accepted to meet with me.
Yes, definitely.
That I can present her, our evidence, and I will explain again for the ones that don't know me yet and don't know what we do, how this testing procedure is that we have developed. So I can present that to her, the results we had, and a little bit of our statistics, how many people actually complaining about this, how many people we tested, how many people are victimized by this against their consent. And then I hope that she will be able to convince the chair of this committee to hear us on these issues.
Wow.
So I will, let's hope for the best. I will certainly let you know in 2 or 3 weeks how the meeting went. Just to explain to our listeners a little bit again what we're doing in terms of providing victims with evidence. And I think it's important to say that most of the victims that we test, they either underwent surgery just before the symptoms started, and the most common symptoms they complain about is excruciating pain all over, headaches especially, visual disturbances, heart fluttering, without any history of cardiovascular diseases or so before, extreme pains all over, auditory effects like tinnitus, or even, hearing voices or hearing audible commands, involuntary body movements, confusion, difficulties to concentrate, difficulties to remember things. And most of the people that we meet were very healthy before, or rather in good health, and then they underwent the surgery and these symptoms started. So either they underwent surgery before, or we also tested a few people that did not undergo surgery, but when we tested them, they always came up positive on the upper arm. We do radio frequency scannings to test people for non-consensual implantation, for radio frequency emissions, and they only had a vaccine there, like typically a flu vaccine.
Ah, thank you. You just answered the question I was going to ask, because I was going to speculate or ask you your thoughts as to how they could have those implants without surgery. So this is bringing up again all the stories that people discounted about the ability to do that with vaccinations.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, we're moving now into an era of really nanotechnology, so it's extremely easy to implant a person without their knowledge and consent. All you need is a needle, basically. So
wow.
yes, and the people we scanned, I mean, the rates are extremely high when we scan them for radio frequency emissions. Just to explain our listeners a little bit, our three-phase testing protocol that we have developed is that the first phase is what we call a preliminary RF scan with a radio frequency detector, that is the DM20 Pro, and which we scan the body for radio frequency emissions. For the ones that come up positive in this scan, we then ask them to help us with medical imagery in the form of a CT scan, MRI scan, or digital panoramic X-ray to see if at that anatomical focus point where the person came up positive, where we could measure the emission, if there is something that we can match up with the CT scan, for example, an unidentified bright object, what we call that, which is basically an implant. And then the third phase, and that we just conducted very successfully, conclusively, let's say, in the Faraday cage in a research facility here last October, 2012, is that we scan the people that came up positive, again in a controlled environment, such as a Faraday cage. And what this does is actually that it eliminates the feasibility that could be the emissions, could be coming from an outside source, and really means that these human beings are emitting a radio frequency, which is not normal for the human body to emit a radio frequency or a radio frequency. So this way, we were able to prove conclusively that these people were implanted, that they were transmitting, and that they have been implanted. To substantiate the findings, we also had a control group. These were people that showed no signs or symptoms of because this is terrorism, we call this electronic terrorism, the symptoms that are just described. And yeah, the scan was negative. We could not measure anything, and frequency counter showed 0. So now armed with these results, we will now be looking into filing a lawsuit.
And I'd like to underline to our audience, you just said armed with these results. You guys hearing this right now have no idea what so many people dealing with this situation face, because Western medical physicians will ridicule patients, tell them they're imagining it, tell them it's something else. And as you've experienced, Melanie, didn't they try to recommend shutting you up with different antidepressant and other drugs?
Yes, that is very common. In fact, I'm not an exception. Most of the people that when they go to their physician and they complain about these kind of symptoms, or even they are mentioning that they think this is what could have happened. To them, they then immediately get diagnosed with some kind of delusional disorder, like paranoia or schizophrenia, and usually are sent to a psychiatrist, or even worse, there have been a few people committed to mental institutions because they were voicing these kind of complaints. in my case, indeed, they did try that as well. But I think I was lucky because lucky, lucky and unlucky at the same time, because I am victimized with a very special nanotechnology that we generally know under Morgellons, which is, the official name is smart dust. And what this technology does, that once it is in your body, it self-assembles and auto-replicates. And as it comes into the body, and it's something that the body doesn't recognize, it tries to get rid of this material. And so it extrudes, visible material like fibers, seeds and granules, all black specks, all kind of really, really strange material. And so this is really material that comes out of your skin, and you can see it. So when I went to the doctor, I showed him this, or I went to see various doctors, dermatologists, that really couldn't help me, but it was difficult to say that I was delusional because they saw that this material coming out of my skin. You could literally watch it coming up, through my skin. But there have been, a few have tried to say that I was had a phobia of parasites, but that wasn't the majority. And I had done my research very well. And then, as I've just explained, I quickly went to found these associations, and I had my file, if you want to say, was well prepared with all this kind of evidence that I was just talking about, the scanning in the Faraday cage.
Sure.
And also I had this material analyzed by a toxologist here in the university clinic, who confirmed that this was inorganic, synthetic material that should definitely not be in my body. So unfortunately for me, I could avoid being, sent to a psychiatrist or being even commissioned to a mental institution, as this happens to so many victims.
And isn't it a very rare occurrence that when you submit this material for laboratory testing, yours did not get lost? Don't they normally claim that the material was lost, so they were unable to test?
Well, that is a very good point. Indeed, that is what usually happens. I was lucky in that way that I think when I first went to the toxologist, I was really his first case. So he was, his first reaction was that of a curious scientist. What is it? But you were right, Robin, even in my case, what came back is it took, I think at one point somebody intervened, because then, at one point he was much less, forthcoming with the information and much less helpful than he had been at the beginning. And when I finally insisted that I want my laboratory report, and they are my right to get them, I finally got them. But what it said was actually that what I've just said, that it's an organic synthetic material, that it is to be classified in the polymers. But he could not totally identify it under the microscope. It was something they had never seen. He said to me that this is some strange stuff. And when I then, pressed him, saying, well, what are we going to do? He then reluctantly said, okay, I'm going to send it to a forensic laboratory, to have this material analyzed there. And from this laboratory, in fact, indeed, the samples disappeared.
My. Yeah, it's so shocking. I'm sure the audience, their initial response must be, oh, they must be exaggerating. But this takes place around the world, guys, to people in all walks of life. The fix is in when it comes to getting these diagnostic procedures done and getting the reports that verify just what this is, not your parasite and not some usual occurrence. So I just, it's outstanding the work that your organizations provide, because as I've shared with you and as we've discussed, and we should be getting ready for part 2 very soon, Melanie, because Crystal River is back from helping out some friends, and hopefully we can get together and do our show for part 2 about Morgellons. and
That
these
would be
technologies.
great.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I've been waiting, and I have a return call to make. But hearing about this for, oh gosh, I'm trying to think when I first learned about Morgellons. Maybe it was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and it just was shocking seeing the videos that were posted online and just thinking and then meeting people that were suffering with these conditions, and the way that they were treated was terrible. So having that confirmation is wonderful. And the more attention that gets focused here and the more acceptance, hopefully the better things will get.
Yes, I think it's really important for people to get this verification, because it's so easy, to say, oh, it's all in your head, and send them to psychiatrists. And what then happens, as you said very, very rightly before, is that these people actually, they are already victims of a technology, of a new technology, as Morgellons, and there are others. But then they basically get victimized again by the psychiatric community. When they're sent to a psychiatrist saying, oh, you suffer from delusions.
Yes.
So it is very, very, very concerning, and indeed very disturbing that this happens to so many people.
And for myself as a physician, I have to say I've not treated a patient with Morgellons. You and Crystal River have certainly stimulated me to do some more research. But I have noted over the years that there is such a high proportion of women that are put on these psychiatric drugs, these horrific SSRIs with so many side effects. And you have to wonder about this woman. Once again, there were practice maneuvers going on in Washington, D.C., and there's a woman driving her car cross-country with her, well, not cross-country, she was from the East Coast, driving to Washington, D.C. with her 18-month-old baby in the car, and for some reason she was in a panic state, and there was a report that she had postpartum depression, which leads one to believe that she was on these medications. But women are given these medications way too readily. And we're facing a situation here in the United States. I don't know if you're seeing this in the European Union and in Belgium, Melanie, where children and adults no longer get therapy to talk with someone about their problems. They're medicated and put on these drugs. Are you finding that to be the same?
Yes, it's the same here. Indeed, I think it's women are much quicker put in the corner, delusional or some psychological disorder. Indeed, the postpartum depression was also a very good excuse. They all used on me why why Morgellons shouldn't be real, and why I must suffer from some kind of a psychological problem. So postpartum depression was something that came up very, very often, and or any kind of delusional disorder, like being paranoid. But from a statistical point of view, it's very interesting. Of those who are symptomatic, in fact, 83 come up positive in the preliminary scan for RF emissions, and of those 83% that we tested, 60% are females and 40 are males. So there is already a higher percentage in this victimization by these new technologies in females. And what we have also realized is that they tend to be isolated, right? There are other single women, or either divorced or widowed, so they seem to be the easy targets.
Okay, so you're saying, or what I'm deducing from what you're sharing, is that they're targeting women with a certain profile that are more vulnerable.
Yes, many women, as I said, they were either isolated, divorced, or single, and many of the women that come to us had actually very good professional lives, so quite independent, but they were not in the country of their origin, which means that there was no or very little family support around them.
Ah, interesting. Sad, but definitely very, very interesting to see these shared data points. We're coming up on break, And I'd love to hear more about all of this, as I know our audience wants to do. If you can type your organizations into the window for producer Jerry, so he can put them again in the chat room, that will be great, and I will post them on Facebook. And we have lots more to cover, people, and lots more that you need to know. You've got to have the eyes to see when events are happening that dominate the news and they provide a distraction from other things that are going on. So you've got to pay careful attention. I'm your anchor, Dr. Robin Falkov, with team member Melanie Vritschan, reporting from Brussels in Belgium on these covert surveillance technologies and the I don't know what kind of adjective for the horrors of Morgellons, but you need to understand this, because you just might have a friend or a family member that is going through something. To those of you who are joining us a little bit late to Revolution Radio, and you are hearing Event Horizons, and we come to you at freedomslips.com Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time. And it is a pleasure to be here. As I have said so many times, I think this is such a wonderful opportunity to be sharing more news with all of you and give you a global perspective. It's a great opportunity, especially for people here in the United States, to expand their horizons. So there are some headlines dominating the news, and this one does tie in with what Melanie and I were discussing, because we are looking at the woman who was killed in D.C. There's a short update about it on Al Jazeera. Oh, maybe it's not that short, but I will scan through this, because the woman's mother claims that she was suffering from postpartum depression but had no history of violence. And we have to see if that common denominator of medication was present, and also to realize that these beamed weapons for mind control and other forms are way too easy to apply and create a person who appears to be crazy. We saw all of this get exposure finally. I mean, there were so many that were as astonished as I that the media actually reported that Aaron Alexis did carve into his rifle stock ELF weapon, and he talked about having these voices beamed at him. He changed hotels 3 times. He let the Veterans Administration know. It was on the record, and it is just a very crazy world and situation where these things, these events, are ramping up. And if you listen to our bumper, I have to tell you, I just like our messages that go out to you on the break so very much. They're so to the point and provocative, and to encourage you to think and reassess so much of the propaganda that you are bombarded with every day in the mainstream media, and know that you can make a choice for yourself, even about something as basic as fear. And it's an exercise you can practice, where you turn off that switch and you will feel that pressure in your chest lessen, and you can calm yourself and understand if there's an issue that is a danger or a threat. You can deal with it when it happens. You can be prepared so that you have the supplies and the necessary tools to be able to handle it. But why waste your time being afraid and put your body through those toxic stress hormones? Doesn't have to be, guys. It's all up to you. So in this article on Al Jazeera, you can see I read a lot of Huffington Post. Law enforcement officials are searching for a motive behind Miriam Carey's fatal attempt to breach a barrier at the White House. And her mother reported that after the baby, she got sick, was depressed, and hospitalized. Kind of fits her profile, guys. And originally from Stamford, Connecticut, she led officers on a high-speed car chase that caused Capitol Hill to need to be locked down, and she was shot dead by the police. Fortunately, her 18-month-old daughter, Erica, who was in the car with her, was not injured. So this is someone whose co-workers and boss, she was a dental hygienist, described her as a very happy person that they didn't believe this could happen with. And there was a chain of events that began when she drove her car past a set of barricades and sped onto a driveway leading to the White House. And this was yesterday. Although she couldn't get through a second barrier, she spun her car in the opposite direction, flipping a Secret Service officer over the hood as she sped away. And they could see that these were intended actions, and the chase began. As she was trying to get away and driving recklessly, they ultimately boxed her car in, and an officer of some kind, not one who was identified as to what department or force he was on, drew his weapon and fired shots into the car. And there was a Secret Service officer and a 23-year-old veteran of the Capitol Police who were also injured, and they're in good condition and expected to recover. Now, they do report there was no return fire, because we know that the initial story, which I happened to have the news on and shared on Facebook, was that she shot back. This didn't happen, guys. Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. Got to get the sounds off so we don't get disturbed. So she did not shoot back, and I'm glad that the confirming reports are out there. And of course, you have a trigger-ready response after what happened just a couple of weeks ago with the shooting at the D.C. boat area in the Navy Yard with Aaron Alexis, who I was talking about before, leaving 13 people dead, including himself. But as I said, with Aaron Alexis, for some reason, whatever the timing is, whatever the change in the climate, he was able to have the message that was so critically important get out, that this was electronic warfare against him, turning him into an electronically guided weapon with his shotgun. So, as the police have been investigating further, Miriam Carey did not appear to have any links to terrorism, and it just seems to be an isolated single matter. Nevertheless, Congress suspended business as Capitol Police broadcast a message over its emergency radio system telling people to stay in place and move away from windows. Police served a search warrant in connection with the investigation and cordoned off a condominium building and surrounding neighborhood in Stamford, Connecticut, as they looked for motives for Carey's actions. Condo resident Eric Brito, a banker, said police told him the suspect in the car chase was one of his neighbors, and he reported that he saw the door to his building open and the FBI squad in front of it, with helicopters flying overhead and more. And this is a report from the Associated Press, guys. And I really urge you to look at these events and get a different perspective on it, and keep in mind that people, and this can occur to anybody. It does seem to be a higher ratio, as Melanie shared with us, 60% women and 40% men who have these electronic implants or Morgellons. But it's that higher ratio of women that are singled out. And we have another data point. My gosh, guys, I'm waiting for that amazing person who's going to update the graphs and chart this, because there were terrorism practice events taking place in D.C. today, yesterday when this took place, and these correlations with these either breakdowns from people on SSRI drugs or being electronically targeted with specific weapons, it's too repeated a pattern to disregard. But there's a lot more. We'll see what develops and what comes out of the news on this. It's an issue that really needs our attention and our focus, because these stories change as things develop. The stories change, and we just hear a whole other spin that's taking place on what we've observed. Now, of course, many of you are wondering, gosh, she didn't mention the shutdown. Well, the shutdown is still going on. The craziness is persisting, and people around this country are suffering. They are without money to buy food, to pay their bills, and they're giving IOUs by the government. Why isn't Congress being given an IOU? Why are these people, when Congress panicked yesterday, why are these people that are protecting their lives not getting paid? And yet they are. Guys, there is so much wrong with this system. It is up to each and every one of us to take action, call those representatives, 866-220-0044, 866-220-0044, and let them know exactly what you think, what you think, what you think, what